When people talk about disruption, they are usually talking about tech startups in Silicon Valley. Netflix disrupted the movie rental business and bankrupted Blockbuster. Amazon disrupted bookstores and then all kinds of stores. Tesla made electric cars competitive and is now being challenged by cheaper electric cars from China. Today, I want to talk about a different disruption story. One that I found unexpected, a bit perplexing, and ultimately fascinating and fun. Today, I want to talk about Aldi, the cheap and quirky grocery store chain that is opening new stores so quickly that it's on pace to be one of America's largest grocery store chains within just a few years. Aldi is not a new, innovative startup. The company was founded in Germany after World War II. Its secret sauce is not AI, robotics, or even online orders. If you walk into an Aldi, it just looks like a grocery store. And yet, Aldi is doing what seems impossible, offering lower grocery prices at a time when grocery bills have gone up and up. And it's outcompeting incumbents like Kroger, Walmart, and Albertsons that have merged and consolidated into a few dominant firms. My guest today is Dina Schenker. Dina is a food and health writer at Bloomberg Businessweek, and earlier this year, she and her colleague Tim Lowe wrote a great magazine article titled The Curious Cult of Aldi. The rise of Aldi in the US is a timely story of Americans reacting to inflation and high food prices. It's also a timeless business story about innovation and how even industries like grocery stores that may appear staid and boring are constantly changing and being disrupted. Dina and I talked about why Aldi is growing so fast, what it's doing differently than traditional grocery stores, and why people identify so strongly with stores that sell them cereal and eggs. Dina Schenker, welcome to Gastronomics.
Thanks so much for having me.
So we're talking about Aldi today, and I feel like every great company or every successful company has both an origin story and a kind of aha moment or eureka moment. So could you tell us a bit about the founding of Aldi and what its big insight was that's in the company DNA even today?
Sure. So Aldi was founded by two German brothers, Karl and Theo Albrecht. They inherited their parents' business, which was a small grocery store in a working class neighborhood. And they had big supermarkets to compete against. They realized they had only a little bit of money, so they could only stock a small assortment in the beginning. So they bought a small variety of products, but at low prices, which allowed them to compete on price for this small selection with their big supermarket competitors. This would turn out to be sort of like the key to Aldi. And what they decided to do was basically just make keeping prices low the center of the operation. So that meant they weren't making the stores decorated and pretty. They weren't advertising. All those extra costs they just cut or never did in the first place. And they kept that selection small too. So instead of saying you're going to a grocery store today, you could pick from like 25 different kinds of rice. They had one kind of rice. They had one kind of beans. And that meant that they had the lowest prices on those things. So they found that this was a successful formula, that there were plenty of customers that really were just looking for low prices and nothing else. And so they started expanding and became bigger and bigger in Germany. At a certain point, though, they decided to split their stores. So the older brother picked up the northern half of Germany, Aldi Nord, and Karl, the younger brother, got the south, Aldi Süd.
I do enjoy that your article is very much about this kind of religious, cult-like devotion customers have to Aldi, and the origin story does include a schism where they did actually divide up Germany as if it was, I don't know, the Pope dividing different parts of countries or something that feels very historical in that way.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think when we now think about like family dynasty businesses and there's a split, like we usually assume some kind of like bad blood, but it doesn't seem to be the case that they were mad at each other. They actually continued to collaborate and they continued living near each other, going to the same church, and both chains really kept a lot of similarities with each other. That ugly neon lighting, the boxes that pile up in the aisles, things that we still see in Aldi here in the United States. So they took different strategies in the US. So Aldi Nord ended up acquiring Trader Joe's, and Aldi Süd became what we know today as Aldi here in the US. Aldi started in the Midwest, and it took like a pretty slow growth plan to begin with. They stayed in the Midwest. They kept that same aesthetic, that same model, small selection. They don't even have individual price tags. They just put a price underneath on the shelf, because to put individual price tags, that's labor.
Yeah, time is money.
That's exactly right.
So could you tell me about some of your kind of favorite or most memorable examples of the lengths that Aldi goes to really be very efficient and keep prices low?
Sure. So one of the things that Aldi is famous for is that you have to insert a quarter into the cart in order to have it released to you. And then when you put the cart back, the quarter comes back to you. And the reason they do this is because they don't want to pay an employee to run around the parking lot fetching carts. They also don't have employees that pack your bags. You have to pack your own bag at Aldi, which, let me just tell you, is really not a big deal. You have to do it quickly at Aldi because they're just constantly moving people through. Another way was they don't have music in the stores, which I didn't notice until someone else, another shopper, pointed it out. And it's because that costs money. Speakers cost money. That music that we all hear incessantly in
yeah,
stores,
that soulless music you hear is not free.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so they just don't play anything, which is totally fine. Who wants to pay a little bit more for groceries to hear some music? You could just put in your headphones. Really, like every little piece of what they do is for the purpose of saving money.
Let me ask a framing question for you here. So Aldi is not a new company, like founded or originated in post-war Germany, has been growing for years, like entered the US decades ago. But it seems like Aldi's really rapid growth is a relatively recent phenomenon. I think to put some numbers to it from your article, you wrote that Aldi plans to have more than 3,000 US locations by the end of 2028, which would be more grocery stores in the country than any other chain but Walmart. It's already generated some $29 billion in US sales. That was in 2024, which puts it ahead of Trader Joe's. Why do you think Aldi is growing so much now, or just in the past few years?
So they had a big moment. I'm going to go back a little further in the 2008 financial crisis. At that point, you were in bad financial situations. That was, I think, a really important point in changing how Americans shop for groceries. Because like I said earlier, we're used to enormous choices, just like never-ending choices at the supermarket. And the more you start paying attention to price, the less you are needing that huge selection, because you're really just choosing not necessarily the lowest price one, but maybe between a couple of the lowest price ones. So that financial crisis really was a major opportunity for Aldi to introduce itself to more Americans, and it took it. Then I've been writing about food for more than 10 years. I have never seen people focused so much on grocery prices as they have been since we came out of the pandemic and the inflation just started going crazy. And obviously that inflation has come down a lot, but prices don't really come down.
Yeah, when inflation goes down, that doesn't mean the prices go back down. It just means they start increasing less quickly than during the high inflation period. Yeah,
that's right. Except we all remember the 2019 supermarket prices. And now with inflation running high, with gas prices running high, people are seeing that bigger portions of their paycheck are going to their groceries. And so Aldi is this great solution for so many people because they have the cheapest stuff. From my experience price comparison shopping, Sometimes Walmart and Aldi were the same, and sometimes Aldi was just a little bit lower. And they do that on purpose. They want to be the cheapest. So they will have not just the cheapest apples, they'll have the cheapest Honeycrisp apples and the cheapest organic Honeycrisp apples. One of the things that Aldi has really done in the past several years in the US is that they have really upped their game in terms of what they're offering to make sure that they're appealing not just to the low-income consumers that already know them, but to the higher-income consumers that are also looking for great deals. So they have expanded their wine selection. They've expanded their charcuterie and cheese selection. I have to say, their burrata for $4.65 earlier this year, I can't say what the price is today, but their burrata was better than some very fancy burrata that I had recently.
I don't think you are the first person I have heard extol the burrata from Aldi. This is one big change Aldi has made since it entered the United States. In post-war Germany, selling just staple foods for cheap was a winning strategy. Today, in the US, Aldi is still focused on low prices above all else. But they've expanded their selection a bit to appeal to middle-class and affluent customers. And it's worked. As a grocery store analyst told Dina, you now see every type of car in Aldi parking lots, from Mercedes on down. The stores themselves aren't fancier, though. Instead, the appeal is more like bargain hunting at a thrift store or flea market.
One of the things about Aldi that makes it fun is that you don't know what you're going to find there. So they change up their inventory in what they call their middle aisle. And there's this like thrill of discovery. Every week they have new stuff. I found like a great game for my kids to play for like $9, like a hockey puck slingshot type of game, a board game that was so great that I actually went back and bought it for my niece and nephew too, because like it was
nice.
It was so fun. You find the cheapest stuff, and then there's also a sense of what will I find today? Maybe I'll get a pizza oven for $99. You might find some, like I bought a ghost-shaped white frozen pizza there for my kids around Halloween. You might get home and make it and find that you actually don't really like it. The great thing is, though, is that you probably paid very little money for it. So the risk is really low as well. And so that is part of, I think, what keeps people coming back from all walks of life and from all income levels.
Yeah, because I can imagine, right, it was a big moment in 2008. It was a big moment in the last few years when there was a lot of inflation that more people were looking for bargains. But I think if Aldi was only a very minimalist store with very low costs, you would probably see people leave Aldi as the economy recovered after 2008. So it does feel like this fun element seems crucial for making it not like, here's where I go to the messy, sad store for the cheapest price, but like, this is a fun experience. I find zany products. I think just from the website, I was admiring a product that was like waffles, but they're stuffed with bacon, egg, and cheese. So it's like a bacon and cheese breakfast sandwich, but all stuffed inside a waffle, right? Like these, and exactly like we're laughing, we're smiling. You would think the like grocery store that its huge main offering is the lowest price by stripping out variety, by just being so focused on cost, wouldn't be fun. But instead, right, people love Aldi. There are these fun products.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the stores really can vary. Some of the stores do feel like a little sad. One of the things they do to keep prices down is they keep staffing levels low. So sometimes that means that the stores get messy, like off-puttingly messy. But you're kind of willing to just step over that piece of garbage or step over that empty box because right behind it is your favorite meat stick brand for about half the price that you would pay for it at the always clean Target. So I think that is just one of the ways that they keep reeling people back in, and Americans are now very willing to just look past that.
Yeah, if the egg price is low enough.
Yeah, that's right.
So one reason I particularly want to talk to you about Aldi is because I feel like it's recent and relatively recent growth in the US just like maybe should not be possible. Like if you came to me roughly 10 years ago and told me to grow Aldi into one of the largest grocery chains in the United States, I think I would tell you it couldn't be done because you already have Walmart and Costco delivering really, really low prices by just being gigantic, just these huge economies of scale. So it seems really hard to compete with price there. I feel like I just would have felt there's like no meaningful way to differentiate Aldi and compete with these existing grocery chains. I would have maybe said like at best we could carve out some kind of like small niche. But clearly I would have been wrong. Aldi is growing. People love it. It's offering, as you said earlier, even lower prices in many cases than a grocery store like Walmart. So what is going on here? What is allowing Aldi to differentiate and grow in what is a very, very mature and competitive market?
Well, I think there's a few things. One is that the obsession with low prices is not just driving people to Aldi, but it's also just driving people to go to more stores. There has been a series of changes in the way we shop. A long time ago, our great grandparents went to the butcher and they went to the dry goods store, et cetera. Then A&P ushered in the age of the supermarket where you would go to one store and buy everything you needed. And now we've moved back into going to a number of stores. Maybe you say, I'll go to Costco for the best quality olive oil at the lowest price, but I'll go to Aldi for everything I can that I can find there because that's also going to be the lowest price. And then I'll fill in the holes at Trader Joe's and whatever my big local supermarket is, so that you're picking your favorite products at the best stores and getting the best prices. And this way of shopping is perfect for a store like Aldi, which is super upfront about the fact that you are not going to find everything you need there because that is just not their model. They've expanded their variety significantly since the early days, but they've never wanted to be the everything store. They want to be the lowest prices on what we've got store.
Yeah. And so it does seem like the way that sometimes there might be a business that is kind of covering everything, but then a competitor could kind of choose certain parts of it and saying, we're going to go after that part. If we focus on just those parts of the business, then we can do that either better or at a lower price.
That's right. I mean, if you look at the Aldi store, there's nothing that you can go in and know with 100% certainty that they are going to have it. And then I would also say that as competitive as the supermarket landscape is, and it's very competitive, the number one factor in where most Americans do their grocery shopping is usually location. So the closest Aldi to me is like 20 plus minutes away. So when I was writing the story, I went a lot, but it's too far for me to go regularly. But if they opened an Aldi within 10 minutes of my house, I would be there all the time. And so there's plenty of zip codes that don't have an Aldi. And so there's lots of room for them to grow.
Yeah. And it does strike me that if I want to go to a Costco, that's like a 25-minute drive out of my way. And then I need to buy things in these huge bulk. Whereas Aldi has kind of found a different way to really good bargains and low prices that allows them to still have relatively small stores. They could have more than one in a single town that someone without a car could walk to. So maybe that's part of how they've managed to compete on price, even when it seems impossible because Costco and Walmart have just invested so much money in these gigantic supply chains to produce low prices. But doing it in a different way where you can have stores that are close by to people is a way to differentiate.
Yeah, at some point, one of the Aldi executives had said that they purposely actually place their stores near other supermarkets because they know that people will go into Aldi and not check off everything on their list. So they want to be somewhere where it's convenient for that shopper to then pop into another store and find, the white pepper that they couldn't find on the spice rack at Aldi.
So I want to provide some context here that help me better understand Dina's explanation of what Aldi is doing differently than other grocery stores. There's a famous business saying that goes, there are only two ways to make money in business. One is to bundle, the other is to unbundle. It's not literally true, but it describes a surprising number of disruptive businesses. Cable companies bundled hundreds of TV channels together and charged one high fee for all of them. Then streaming services like Netflix unbundled television by allowing people to pay for just Netflix, which felt liberating for a few years. But now customers are annoyed about subscribing to so many streaming services. So streamers are teaming up to form bundles, like getting Disney, Hulu and HBO Max for one reduced price. Another example. In the 90s, Oracle bundled together all kinds of business software. Then a former employee created a company, Salesforce, that just made software for sales teams. By unbundling this one software from the bundle, Salesforce had a lower price and could focus on making their sales software as good as possible. And then, of course, Salesforce added more features. They started bundling. As Dina pointed out, for a long time, grocery stores got more bundled. People once went to the baker, the butcher, and the greengrocer. Then the supermarket put all those things under one roof. And then Walmart, Target, and Costco created superstores where you could buy groceries and clothes and big screen TVs. Now, Aldi is unbundling the grocery store by stocking way fewer items than a standard supermarket. This was the original Aldi insight that Dina shared earlier. The Aldi founders realized that a smaller selection meant less money spent on rent for a huge store, less money spent paying for people to organize the shelves, and less money spent buying eggs, rice, and fruit, because Aldi could buy in bulk from just a few suppliers. That's how Aldi can match or beat behemoths like Walmart and Costco on price, and open lots of smaller, conveniently located stores. But there's one more key ingredient to Aldi's success in the US.
One thing I would say that's really important was the rise of private label, and Trader Joe's was one of the originals on the private label. What happened was basically a mix of things. One was, if you remember from the pandemic, we had to get used to shelves running out. And so if I went to the supermarket and I was always buying, say, Cheerios, I might find that they're all out of Cheerios, but there's a private label option. No, and it's cheaper. I'll try it because I wanted my Cheerios. And I get home and it turns out that I just saved money and it's either like the same or maybe it's better. And so that was one reason that private label started growing during the pandemic.
Also, as inflation got worse, it became even another reason that people were turning to private label because of the price tag. Private label also started getting even better.
And private label meaning, right, like this is not Heinz ketchup. It's ketchup made by Kroger or Safeway or Whole Foods, the kind of store brand.
That's right. It's the store brands. Those are always less expensive, or pretty much always. And so private label is taking off and becoming really mainstream. Like, there used to be a time where if you had guests over, you didn't want them to see that you were serving like private label Ritz crackers, But now I don't think there's any shame in it at all. Or at least there isn't at my house. And if my guests are judging me, they can keep it to themselves.
Historically, supermarkets have mostly sold the same products. If I go to a Safeway, a Kroger, or an Albertsons, they all have the same navel oranges, the same Heinz ketchup, and the same Tropicana orange juice. But 90% of Aldi products are private label. That bacon, egg, and cheese stuffed waffle, that's an Aldi product. So if you fall hard for the stuffed waffle, you're going to be loyal to Aldi. Plus, Aldi makes its own private label versions of popular products like Oreos, which is another ingredient of Aldi's low prices. They don't have to pay the companies that make Oreos, Cheerios, and Ritz crackers a big premium to stock their products. When I've been trying to conceptualize how Aldi is different, why it's succeeding, one comparison I found quite helpful is to Quince, like the clothing store. And I see you nodding, so maybe you have like a nice but not terribly expensive cashmere sweater from Quince or something like that. For those who are not familiar, Quince is often described as a company that sells dupes. Quince often looks for, say, a pair of Chanel ballet flats that cost like $1,000 and are really popular. And they'll go make a ballet flat that looks very, very similar, and they'll sell it for like $80 or $100. And I think there's a way that that's what's going on with private label at grocery stores like Aldi. They're not seeing $1,000 ballet flat. They're seeing that Oreos cost like $5 and think they could do it for $3 or something like that, right? They are kind of duping popular brand name products.
Yeah, I mean, this is what Aldi does. This is part of how they operate. Actually, some Aldi executives had to testify to an Australian parliamentary inquiry on supermarket prices in 2024. And the Aldi Australia chief commercial officer, he was pretty open about the fact that one of the things that Aldi does is they look at the market and they see what's popular. Then they develop their own version of it. So now you can go into the store and you love Oreos and you see the Aldi version. And guess what? The packaging looks just so similar. You barely even notice the difference. They're both the same color. Even the cookie is facing the same angle and the price is lower. And then you bring it home and it tastes just like an Oreo. Well, this is what happened. They got sued by Mondelez for this exact reason. And Mondelez noted that they were blatantly copying the products that they had spent hundreds of millions of dollars advertising. And Aldi just comes in and rides on their coattails. Well, what happens is that the consumer wins for sure. I did a nice little Oreo taste test with my kids.
Who have very discerning palates, I'm sure, these children of yours. Yeah. Right. This is industry standard. Or maybe it is. I don't know. But yeah.
They liked them all. They couldn't tell the difference. They were just thrilled that mom was giving them Oreos, to be honest.
Do you feel guilty at all buying the knockoff Aldi version of Oreos?
No.
Because it is interesting, right? This is what Amazon is being widely criticized for. Amazon runs a marketplace and then it sees which products are really successful and it makes its own version and offers it for cheaper and puts it out really prominently. And Aldi is basically doing the same thing. And I don't really know why. I kind of love it when Aldi or Trader Joe's does it.
The first big difference, I would say, is it depends on who you're copying. Mondelez has plenty of money. I don't have plenty of money. So that's gonna work out in my favor. And I think that that's totally fine and a good consumer choice. But things get trickier when you're talking about much smaller companies and companies where maybe the craft is not mirrored in the knockoff.
Yeah, it seems like this tricky issue because on one hand, companies trying to replicate very blatantly the success of anything that's popular in the marketplace, like that's the economy. Like that's how we get better products and cheaper prices. Yeah. But for sure, I can think of, say, a Trader Joe's example where I don't remember the name of the product.
Oh, tons of product.
Yeah. Yes. It's not, makers of Oreos. These are, some person who's put their heart and soul into developing a product. Maybe they're Indian or Indian American and it's a food product from India. And then they kind of see the soulless Trader Joe's private label version that's pretty clearly mimicking the branding language of what they've done.
Yes. And there have been very serious allegations against Trader Joe's for not just copying these independent, often like ethnic products. The allegations have been that Trader Joe's kind of hoodwinked some of these companies into thinking that they were going to get an opportunity to be stocked at Trader Joe's. That opportunity never came through. And then they see a private label version on their shelf and feel like they were tricked into sharing some of their secret sauce with the company just to have it used against them, essentially.
Right. This feels like the grocery store equivalent of a big company saying, oh, we want to acquire you. Can you tell us all about your business? And then they've launched their own version of your business.
That's right.
Something that is very striking about Aldi is this level of fandom and cult-like devotion that you wrote about, which is somewhat strange, right? Because I think if there was a company that someone was going to really personally identify with and be a fan of, you might expect it to be something like a surfboard company if they're a big surfer, or some super cool indie coffee brand if they're really into coffee. I don't think you would expect people to really identify with their grocery stores. That's just kind of like, gotta buy eggs, gotta buy rice. It feels very humdrum. And yet, people love Aldi. People love Costco. Like, I've told multiple people that I like their Costco sweatshirt or their Kirkland signature t-shirt. People love Trader Joe's. There's one tote bag at Trader Joe's that just says Trader Joe's on it. And like, it's constantly sold out. And like, allegedly, if you like, it would be worth your while to buy a ton of them, take them to Japan and sell them there. Cause people are so eager to get their hands on these tote bags. You'd make a profit, like absurd things. Why do you think there is often this level of like fandom attachment and personally identifying with grocery stores of all things?
Well, I think Americans have grown increasingly conscious of their food in the past 10, 15 years, about where it's coming from, what's in it, the quality, is it healthy? So I think we have become a foodier nation. And then I think it's interesting who has those fandoms? Because you mentioned Costco, Trader Joe's, I'd add Wegmans into that mix, and Aldi. These are all supermarkets with really strong private label programs. It's not just that people love the store, they love the products. They love specific products. And so you really do develop an affinity for the place that makes your favorite, waffle. The Trader Joe's whole grain waffle, like I will not get another waffle for my house. That is our waffle.
I would make a strong pitch for the ube mochi pancake and waffle mix from Trader Joe's, but yes, I respect your choice.
Well, you know what? I will consider trying it. But I think people really do find connection with the stores that make their foods and sell them their foods, and especially if they're doing it at a low price and in a way that keeps them curious and excited and coming back. That is another thing that you find at Costco, at Trader Joe's, and at Aldi is like, what am I going to find this time? It could be different than last time. So yeah, the fun, we'll take our thrills where we can get them,
Yeah. All right. Well, that seems like a nice place to end. So let me finish by asking my two final questions here for each guest on the show. The first one is, what is something about the business side of the food industry that you really wish more people understood?
I think it would be that it's people that are making all of this possible, that it's people in the fields, it's people in the factories, it's people driving trucks, packing trucks, unloading trucks. A lot of these people work for wages that don't reflect how hard the labor is. And a lot of these people do jobs that Americans would never do, no matter how much they were paying. And so I hope that when people are looking at the price of their strawberries and saying, wow, this is expensive, that they realize that it's human beings' hands that are picking those strawberries in significant heat, often exposed to pesticides. The meat industry, it can be very, very dangerous. These are often dangerous, hard jobs. And I hope that people realize that it is human hands that are doing them.
Absolutely. And final question, what is one food or drink experience that you recommend to everyone?
Ooh, well, what's tricky is that sometimes a food or drink experience is a little too good. I can tell you the food that I cannot keep in my house, which is the Snyder's Lance pretzels, the like little window pretzels, because I will eat the entire bag. I'll literally go from my office upstairs down to the main level, down to the basement, just to grab another handful because they're so good that I can't stop eating them. And I know that's like the most like basic, like boring snack, but I truly can't, I can't stop with them. And also, of course, the Trader Joe's everything but the bagel spice, which goes on everything, and Aldi makes it too, but a little cheaper.
I appreciate an endorsement for a snack that is both affordable and is also so good that you are taking trips down to the basement. That's a good endorsement.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dina. Thanks for joining me.